from Satan and giving it to the serpent.
Can we look at a little lesson from history?
Yes, let's do that.
1930s. There was depression.
Right.
Exactly.
You had unemployment
Exactly.
at the highest level.
Yes.
it's been.
Oh, we are on. Yes, we are on. We are on, yes. Today, we are going to have some fireworks. Yes. No, it's not the 4th of July. No, I get, as y'all know, the past show we've had Sister Tracy talk about communism. We had Brother Milton talk about socialism. Anybody y'all think that it's the same thing? Well, by God, y'all about to find out it ain't the same thing. We're going to have our guests here, the panel. We're going to discuss. You know, I'm going to ask questions. You know, Yanga, he's in the house. He's going to ask questions. Guinea is going to ask questions. We're going to find out what is socialism, what is communism, what is the difference? Because we heard Tracy's side, we heard Milton's side. So now we're going to, let me introduce my guests. To my right, we got Sister Tracy. How you doing, Sister Tracy?
Okay.
We're going to talk on the subject of chemtrails. And before we get started, I want to introduce my panel. To the right, got the lovely Chi. How you doing today, Chi? I'm doing very well. All right, excellent, excellent. And to her right, we have Brother Sumter. Sumter, okay. Sumter, okay. Hey,
How you doing today, bro?
I'm doing good today. I'm doing very, very, very good today.
Thank you, sir.
And to his right, we got King.
Uh-oh, look at it. Now, you the king.
King. King of the atheists.
No, that would be you.
I used to be black. I used to be king of the black atheists.
Right.
And white people were like, no, you're being racist. I said, okay, I'm king of all the atheists.
Well, I be your servant. Get on, Ben Yashara.
All right. Okay. We're going to talk about chemtrails. Now, Gita and I, we got some questions for our guests here. You know, we got something who's going to tell us about the chemtrails. We got she's going to offer some solutions. Yeah, I love solutions too.
Yes.
Because, you know, I mean, you know, we're already battling with the food.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, we
We're
are.
battling with mind control.
Hello.
You know, and I just found out that the video games were actually, they're going to use our skills in the games to put into the computers so the computers can come kill us.
Exactly.
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence.
The Pentagon, yes, it's classified information, by the way.
Yes, sir.
Son, what are chemtrails? I mean, I see it, you know, when I was a little kid, I used to see a plane go by and they used to advertise, eat at Joe's in chemtrail riders. So, you know, we were little kids, we're like, oh, yeah, you know. And, I mean, the stuff was pretty low, too.
Yes.
And we would just sit there all day, right under the chemtrail. Because we thought it was cool, and they would make loop-the-loops. They would draw, pick flowers, all of this. You know, in California, they try to make it pretty.
Yes.
They try to beautify your death.
Chemtrails are put out by, I want to say military personnel, because the planes are unmarked and they don't even file flight plans.
Right.
Anything over 18,000 feet is supposed to be.
Okay.
And what they do is they have these huge containers in the airplane, and they have these nozzles on the back of the plane. And the way you can tell a chemtrail from a vapor trail disappears.
Okay.
Perhaps you will get rid of a class society, and you will have basically a world that will be fit for human beings and the earth, and that is not crazy. It is something that actually has, you know, the possibility of being brought in. Where I'm coming from, I follow the works of Bob Avakian, who has actually developed a whole new synthesis of communism, looking at the mistakes and the advances that communism in its very short-lived times that it's had on this earth, and developed a whole new synthesis of communism in order to actually put together a development that will we can do better the next time. And so I really encourage people to check out Revolution newspaper. I'll throw this out there. Revolution newspaper. This is a weekly newspaper, revcom.us. It's actually a very important, you know, collective educator, but a collective organizer. And like, for instance, this title this week is called "Everyone's Talking About Inequality, but Let's Talk About the System That's Causing It." So I think that that's a really important thing for people to actually get their hands on, and they can go online or they can get Revolution books and actually get a copy.
Okay. Milton?
Well, let me first say something about who we are.
Okay.
We're part of the Democratic Socialists of America. We have a local chapter here in Atlanta. Democratic Socialists of America was started up by Michael Harrington. Some of you know a little bit about the history of the 60s. He wrote a book called The Other America. Now, that book opened up the eyes of the American public and even the administrations of both Johnson and Kennedy. And they both kind of concluded that there needed to be something significantly done to deal with the issue of poverty. And so Michael Harrington formed the organization, Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee, and subsequently that merged with another group called the New American Movement. We've got 7,000 members nationwide. Now, our position is that we all know, in fact, we might all agree as leftists, that there are a whole slew of issues that we need to deal with. The ones that were pointed out: economic inequality, unemployment, health care, housing, jobs. All of those are significant and critical issues. Now, for us as Democratic Socialists, we think we need to be able to build organizations in coalition with each other to move toward addressing those issues. Because you're not going to address those issues individually as organizations. It's only by building a mass movement.
Right.
It's the same kind of thing we did in the 1930s with the labor movement and the movement in the 60s with the civil rights movement. And for us right now, the key issue is working in coalitions to build a mass movement to address those issues. So if people get, I'll give you an example. Tomorrow, Moral Monday. I think this is important to note. This is an example if people are ready to take on what needs to be taken on. There are 600,000 Georgians who don't have health care.
That's right.
Only because the governor said, I don't want it to have him here. He's not going to go along with the program.
We don't want that Obamacare here.
Yeah, we don't want any of that here. So what's going to happen? If that doesn't go into effect, the Harvard Medical School came up with a survey. 1% of people die if there's no health care.
That's right.
So 600 people are going to die this year, just deaths. We're not talking about disease and illnesses, because there is no Medicare. So what we're organizing, and this happened, this is a good example of when organizations come together and mass mobilization. There's going to be a major action tomorrow at the state capitol. It's going to be at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
And the point is to rally and get support around getting the governor to go along with getting Medicaid for those folks here in Georgia.
Okay.
And it'll be important, and I hope some of the viewers here will take that very seriously when they think about how they can make a difference. Be out there tomorrow from 4 to 6 at the state capitol and express your position. We want health care for all here in Georgia.
Okay. Real quick, I want to address why I brought you guys here. You know, Yang and I, we're facing a dilemma, an eternal dilemma, and it's similar to the ideology of Bob Avakian, which you talked about a dictatorship, and Milton, you talked about a democracy. Now, why, and I'm going to defer to Yang and Gideon after I ask this question, but Milton, why a democracy?
Well, if you, from our point of view, you can't have socialism without democracy.
Okay.
They go together. And to simply have, and that's why from our position, we don't have one leader, for example, who kind of says, hey, this is the way that needs to be, this is the best way to approach the issues today and build a revolution. We are a multi-tendency organization. So we can have somebody like Cornel West, who's an honorary chair.
Right.
He does great stuff. You all follow some of the stuff that he does, analyzing racism and class. He understands it all.
You know, it's funny you mention that because Bob Avakian and Cornel had a friendly conversation, but they didn't get down to the nitty gritty.
They got pretty nitty gritty. I mean, not totally, but you can get that on
like the arena,
air.
Tracy.
What?
They didn't get like the arena.
Oh,
They're kind of friendly. He dancing around, tap dancing.
I think what he's talking about, Milton, is Cornel West interviewed Bob Avakian on his radio show, Smiley and West, on,
It was all nice and pretty.
on Public Radio International. So it's a worthwhile thing for people to check out.
Those things are important to do, is to have that kind of exchange. And I
Yeah.
think with left organizations, I know Gideon wants us to get into it hot and heavy, but it's also important. It's also important for left groups to be talking to each other because we have a similar analysis. Actually, it's a question. The difference that we have is the strategy to getting to where we want to go. But in terms of a critique, much of their critique, left critiques, will all be the same. Something fundamentally flawed with the capitalist system. It needs to be changed. Now the question then becomes is, what's the best way, what's the most effective way to make that happen, to change the system? That's where we depart in some of the different viewpoints that we have.
Right, because I mean, and Yanga, you can jump in anytime, because we talked about, now Tracy, now why is it, now explain the dictatorship from Bob Avakian's standpoint. So I don't want to misrepresent, you know.
No, that's
the
fine.
ideology.
I mean, one thing I just want to say, because is that, you know, Bob Avakian is the chairman of the Revolutionary Communist Party, and it, you know, be worth people to actually dig in and find out for themselves, even after this conversation takes place. But we talk about a dictatorship of the proletariat. Unbeknownst to people, we actually live under a dictatorship.
Exactly.
And we live under a dictatorship which is the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, or in other words, the dictatorship of the capitalist class. And that's what we all live under, and that we're all having to, you know, which creates all the misery and you know, and all of the thinking that goes on, and the way people treat one another. All of that is based on this economic system, and then you have the class of capitalists that actually enforce that system, and the politics that sits on top of us to enforce that whole system. The dictatorship of the proletariat, after our solution is revolution. There is no reform, there is nothing that actually can be done to change or tweak capitalism. It actually needs to be overturned. And we say that there's nothing short of revolution that's actually going to create the conditions to emancipate all of humanity, not just Americans, but worldwide. There is misery that goes on from across the seas and back again. But the point is that the dictatorship of the proletariat after the revolution is when the oppressed people who have been oppressed under the system will actually be a part of running that system. And we see that socialism is actually the revolutionary transition between capitalism and getting to a world of communism, and it doesn't happen until it's worldwide.
I believe Gideon wants to address that, because you made a statement earlier, Gideon, about Satan and the devil, Paul and Peter. So, I mean, it sounds, I mean, I don't know.
Sounds religious.
It sounds like Tracy's saying, well, we're already under a dictatorship. We might as well get a new dictatorship. I don't know.
Actually,
Different values, though.
well, I agree
okay,
to a
well,
certain extent that, see, what we're finding is that communism and socialism, as basically what you said, is an evolutionary process, and one metamorphosizes into the other. See, what you stated there is that America and capitalism has to be brought down through revolution. We're right here. We're Zen, Buddha, third eye, all that in alignment. Now, once you get past that, when we talk about what we're going to replace it with, you then said that after revolution, then democratic socialism will be the part of picking up the pieces, and then that democratic socialism will ultimately morph into communism. Now, for me, if you're still dealing with a system that deals with carbon-based fuels, if you're still dealing with the system that's polluting our air, our water, if you still have the same automotive industry in control, you're still dealing with the same issues. Because no matter what political party you call or set up or name yourselves, if the way you deal with the earth, the resources of the earth, and how it is distributed among the people is the same, then you really basically have the same system. Right. So one of the things that my beloved brother Yanga and I agree on is that once you deal with a resurgence of controlling the destiny of our future, then for me it has to have a Hebraic component. For him it has to have a black nationalist component. For both of us, it means woolly-haired melanated people have to look out for the interests of woolly-haired melanated people first. Then, in essence, charity starts where? At home. At home and spreads abroad. So for you all, even though you may have different philosophical perspectives, at the end of the day, you look at Milt, you looking at your brother. He's looking at his sister. But when you look at us, based on the programming of white supremacy, you're looking at somebody that's not even human and that's being villainized over the planet.
Gideon, I just stated, see, you just ignored what I said.
Yes.
See, we brothers,
Right.
but you come from a theocratic standpoint.
True.
And me and Yanga, we've discussed where you have so-called black nationalists talking about a dictatorship and martial law.
Absolutely.
Let me make this for the record. Black nationalists, we have no concept of a dictatorship and martial law in Zinga. Malik Zulu Shabazz. I'm sorry, Yanga.
Pick
Go
up
ahead,
your mic,
brother.
bro. Pick up your mic.
Yeah, pick up your mic, bro.
I think that, and listening to both of the questions is like what Brother Walt said, correct? Milt. That was the elder.
That's right.
Getting confused. I think that we have to look at end game. You know, when we look to, as far as, you know, my question is, what is the end game? I think with African people here in America, it just can't stop with reformism. I think one of the problems in the past has been our separation from revolutionary tactics to reformism. You know, we were separate. The revolutionaries were getting on the reformists were getting on the revolutionary. Like I said earlier on your show, one of my teachers, Dr. Ahmed Muhammad, who was formerly Max Stanford, was saying in one of his writings, Black Political Thought, that at this point in time that they have to conjunct and come together. Right. I think that we have to take in consideration what capitalism was based on and what it's founded on, which is racism.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So to take our struggle out of this, to take the historic, what started the whole thing out of it, is there again to do us a disservice. Exactly. So to put someone in charge of us, coming from, so this is my thing about, I want to hear more about the democratic socialism and how going through the whole reform process and us voting with this capitalist imperialist system is going to help us. And then I want to hear more about how this, you know, putting someone who, and I like Chairman Avakian. I've listened to him, man. I had the party listen to him. And I had some people, hey man, turn it off, man. We got to take a break because it will get you that fiery. But at the end game, we have to be sure that that our emotions are not being exploited. Exactly. And that we're not, and that our color is not being exploited, and that people are not looking at us as a people that can't practice self-governance.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And even my man Lenin said that people have a right to self-determination. This is what I'm not hearing here. I'm not hearing the self-determination of an African people here in America. And this is my only concern with the socialists, even though, you know, a lot of my views and this and that, and even my views are like socialist views, my political understanding, but it's not from the point that it would distract or take away from me as an African here in America facing certain specific issues. So I'm listening for those things. How would going to a revolutionary communism, because I would do you that justice, I won't just say communism.
That's right.
Because if we just say communism, my problem with that is just saying communism is W.E.B. Du Bois was a communist.
Hello.
And he got into it with my man Marcus Garvey.
Hello.
So I have some things there that I'm concerned about. So I would say revolutionary communism, and Chairman Avakian's synthesis, how it's different from that communism, and why Africans or Africans here in America should be a part of that. Why should we give ear to that? How is he going to be any different? How is he not prone to the sicknesses of white privilege?
Thank you.
And the same with the democratic socialism, because what I hear here is just more reformism. And we see what reformism got us through the likes of our brother Dr. Martin Luther King and the other integrationists in the civil rights movement. It's got us to this damn point. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's why I'm in complete and total advocates of separation. So I would just like to hear more from, you know, and being that we put you on the spot on a show that is catered and geared towards an African audience and African nationalists, we want to know how this would affect us. You know what I'm saying? And why.
All right.
Well, I was just thinking as we were having this discussion about fast food workers who went out on strike.
Okay.
We were part of Atlanta Jobs with Justice, and we supported these workers who went out on strike. Now, they're getting $8 an hour. And I was mentioning right before we started that one of the women was fired, an African-American woman. By the way, most of the workers who went out on strike were African-American.
Right.
And so she lost her job. She's making $8 an hour. Now she's got to find another job. And reason she went out on strike, the courage it took, is because she agreed with the basic demand, which was $15 an hour.
Right, that's right.
Now, if you have somebody, if you start talking to them about revolution, the slogan of revolution, they wouldn't understand what that has to do with their immediate situation. She's trying to get money to raise a family. She understands getting $15 an hour. That's real. And that's why she was most supportive. She appreciated so much the fact that people were out there to support her after she was fired. And we went into the manager and we demanded that she get her job back, even though he violated the law by firing her. The point is, slogans of revolution don't take care of the issues that people are immediately facing. And so let's start with that. And the way you build toward a socialist or a revolutionary point, although I would make this is an argument, we're nowhere near that point, nowhere near having a revolution. What we have to do first is build a strong movement, a strong mass movement.
Agreed.
That's the first thing we have to do. We don't have that now. We have the seeds of it. There are a lot of good things that are happening with Occupy. A lot of groups are organizing. Workers who don't have unions are organizing.
That's right.
We know the attack on the right toward unions. We know what that's been about. And we know that the trade union movement has the lowest percentage of workers that it's ever had. It's down to 12%.
Absolutely.
And if we had a representation in the unions of 35% like existed 30 years ago, we'd have a much stronger progressive force. So from the democratic socialist perspective, we need to build those movements. We need to build the labor movement. We need to build all kinds of movements that deal with inequality, that deal with peace, that deal with justice. And if we begin to do that, we don't bother to think about how is it going to look down the end of the road. There may be a revolutionary point once things are in motion.
Right.
But if we don't get these victories, people are going to get cynical and defeatist. You need to win some things, and you need to let people know there is a movement out there. I can't tell you the number of people who, when Occupy went to their homes after they were evicted, how proud they were to know that there were other people there with them, somebody standing up for them. And I heard a number of people say, I've never done this in my life. I've never stood up like this, but I feel I have to. They knew that there were other people there supporting their struggle. And if you said to them, revolution, forget all of this, join the revolution, what meaning would that have to them? So let's build the movement, let's address those issues, and down the road, and this is where we may have some sharp differences, I don't think it's somebody out there who has the plan. What it's going to take is wrestling with it, and if people come up with a different direction than you and I have, let it be. However it takes shape, let it go. We can't predict how it's going to take shape. It may not happen in our lifetime, it may happen in another lifetime. But let's get a mass movement that's strong and powerful to move things along.
But doing what though? My thing is, okay, we can give Shaniqua $15 an hour, but if we're not on the producing end of that, we're still just consumers. Exactly. This is the point that I'm making, what affects our community. It doesn't matter how much wealth you pour into our community if we're not educated, first of all, how to take that wealth and if we don't practice self-determination, basically what I'm saying.
Manufacturing.
If we're not the producers, if we're not just the consumers, the distributors and all of that, then it is just we're still on the bottom end, whether that's democratic socialism or revolutionary communism. We will still be on that bottom end and the bottom factor because Africans here in America still suffer with their identity problem. And we can be exploited by that. We give into the humanitarian emancipation type thing and this multiculturalism and the world needs to be free, this and that. We need to free our asses.
Hello?
You see what I'm saying? So we're still, like you said, the people getting laid off. We can do all of that and we can go into a whole new change of regime, but will we still be the last ones hired and the first ones fired?
Let me pull the lens way back on this, because the thing is that this is such a narrow confine as to how things affect, in America itself. And, I'm all for people standing up against the injustices and trying to get, we stand side by side, with people who are actually going up against, standing with people who are trying to get better wages for, people who are not, have adequate health care for, all of these sort of things that go on here. But let's pull the lens way back. How does capitalism, imperialism work? I think that and I totally don't agree with your point that if you brought revolution into the mix with people that they wouldn't understand that. People understand that. People understand, but what they need to understand is what is, again, what this says, everyone's talking about inequality, but let's talk about the system that's causing it. We actually need to get out there and really, people need to really understand what is the problem. And the problem is capitalism, imperialism. Okay, so now, you can sit in this country and you can say, okay, we're going to try to get $15 for workers at what fast food thing. Okay, well, that would be cool if they get that. But on the other hand, you're sitting on top of the rest of the world. This is the top dog in this pyramid that is getting off the spoils of imperialism of the people all around the world. There are the resources, are the people around the world. When you're talking about people in Bangladesh, you're talking about people in China, when you're talking about sweatshops, right. You're talking about $38 an hour. You're talking about the fact that that is the way capitalism works. It is driven by competition. It is driven by accumulation, private accumulation. So how does that work? You have, and today in this world, globalization, you've got monopolies of capital. You've got huge, aggregates of capital that actually move around and do everything. So, you look at, for instance, what you want to talk about, what's actually really happening to African Americans and Latinos, and you're talking about the fact that and it's not because, greed, whatever, what's it called when people say that that's just your nature or something, it's just nature. Yeah, but my point is that greed and those things are actually fostered by this, but that's not the base. That's not the basis as to why capitalism is, because if you don't compete with other capitalists, you go under. You don't expand, you die. And so you're going to go wherever it's going to take you in order to actually make the most profit, because this whole system is based on profit over people. That is the way this system works. Right. So when you're talking about why is it Detroit is completely devastated today, is because they had to pick up all of those factories and they had to move them overseas down to Mexico or wherever, because they're going to make the most profit by actually doing that. Now what happens to the community is that they don't, this economic system today, because it's had shifts and it's actually changed in great deals, they don't have people, particularly black people, do not have a place in this economic system anymore. So what are they doing? They're warehousing them. You've got 2.3 people in prison today, mostly blacks and Latinos. Why is that they're actually warehousing people? Why is it that there's police brutality, shooting people down? And then you also have the whole mentality of people in oppressed communities that are actually going after each other. And they're going after each other not because, it's because they're in this whole way of thinking, it's me against you, it's dog eat dog.
And it's safer. Let's keep it real, it's safer. If I do something to you as a white woman, they will put me under the prison. It is safer
if
to
you
attack.
Make it to the
if
prison.
I make it to the prison, it is safer to attack our own.
Well, no, it's not only you might have a point there, but my point is that if they act, they might have the guns and they might be actually shooting each other, but what has created the conditions that they actually go after each other like that? See, that's a very big difference between, yes, people, we do need to, and I agree with the point that we need to actually fight the powers the way we say it. We need to go up against these injustices. In the midst of people fighting the power, you actually, we need to transform ourselves for revolution. We need to actually put revolution front and center and say, look, we need to go up against this today. However, if we don't get rid of the system, we're on this ongoing, treadmill that's getting us nowhere, absolutely nowhere, because the system itself has its rules, it has its laws, and there is nothing that you can do to actually undermine that or think that you're going to actually get anything better. So keeping that away from people is actually it's creating very dangerous conditions for people here and around the world. And we should be just as heartfelt and want to actually emancipate all people of color and people all over the world, including half of humanity, which is women. Look, you have black people and women that hold up this whole system. Women themselves are looked at as, either for pleasures of men or making babies. That's it. That's the way they're looked at in society. That also has to be uprooted as a part of the revolution.
Let me just hop in there, because I think your critique that you ran down is pretty much a critique that we would have. And I think you're absolutely right. When you do support reforms, you want to educate people that the problem is the system itself. And the analysis you have to use is to show how it does divide people and how people are repressed. There's no question about it, and exploited, and all of that. So that goes without saying, and I think that's critical. But the way you do that is by showing why it happened and why the reform is important to take place. So you link the two together. You don't just say, hey, support this, but explain how is this all connected up and what do we all need to do to make the system more responsive. And I think if we organize and mobilize around those issues and we get those victories, that does allow people to see that there's opportunities out there. I'll give you an example. We talk about inequality. What we do is we do a PowerPoint presentation that demonstrates that this inequality that we have right now has been built up over the past 30 years, since the 1970s. What that basically means is that the system that we call it, this capitalist system, neoliberalism, has done a couple of things. It's deunionized. This is what neoliberalism is. Right. It attacks unions. It deregulates. Absolutely. So there's no regulation. It decreases taxes for the wealthy and the rich. Absolutely. And it destroys and dismantles the safety net. Now, some people need to know this didn't just begin to happen. This has been a feature of the capitalist system for the past 40 years. The only reason things were a little bit better in the 60s and 70s is because people were in motion. And they made certain things happen. We got Medicare. You know, we talk about poverty, and I'll give you an example of why reforms do make a big difference. Before there was Medicare, I have Medicare right now. I'd love for everybody at this table to have Medicare. Everybody in this country to have Medicare. Dental also. It's a great system. It works beautifully. We're the only country that doesn't have universal medical care. That's right. Before the Medicare was implemented in the 60s, poverty rate for the elderly was about 30%. 30%. We're talking about poverty right now, but what's happened for the elderly right now? It's down to 8%. Well, when you increase Social Security, when you provide for medical care, it does make a difference in the lives of people. And so you will not hear anybody say, I want Medicare to be dismantled. They will support that. Right. Those benefits are important. Social Security, there are people who are concerned that there won't be Social Security when they retire. Imagine if you've got half of the people that they count on Social Security as their main income when they retire. We better make sure we have a system in place for them. What are you going to do when you retire if you don't have Social Security or anybody else and you've been working for a while? Right. That kind of reform is important. We need to build on that. Social Security should be even much better.
People are facing that dilemma now.
Right, exactly.
As we speak, you know, you got homeless.
So we got to fight for those reforms.
Right, and Gideon, you can come in, and I think that's what Tracy was talking about. You know, I think people can relate to the term revolution. But go ahead, Gideon. I know you. Let
me just say this. Brother Younger brought out an excellent point, and I don't think it was really spoken to, and that's white privilege. See, when we talk about the dismantling of one system, and then again, I think Tracy will acquiesce to a certain extent and brought in the agenda of the democratic socialists. After revolution, she said that it would, a democratic socialism of a type would emerge, and then out of that would come communism. So my question to you, first of all, for both of you, what are the percentages of woolly-haired melanated people in your groups to date? Percentages. Right. Well, not necessarily make decisions, that just even adhere to your philosophy. And because he said he's got 7,000 members. You never mentioned how many members you guys had. What are the percentages? And then when we look at those percentages, when we talk about white privilege, as Brother Young has mentioned as well, how could we guarantee that once you all get in power once again, that the same type of privileges.
Why can't we get in power? Gideon,
well, because it's not our philosophy. We didn't come up with communism. We are communal people, but we didn't come up with communism.
We didn't come up with the Bible either.
J. Edgar Hoover said communism is nothing but primitive African communalism.
Exactly.
So it was all stolen from us.
Okay, I agree with that.
Okay, but Gideon.
But those are the two questions I want to know. What are the percentages of woolly-haired melanated people in the democratic socialists and the communist group, not fabricated, documented.
I want to object. You're approaching this.
He wants to object.
You're approaching this as a servant. What I'm saying is, I don't want a piece of the pie. I want to help
Build
make the
society.
pie, bake the pie, and distribute the pie. See, you're coming as a humble servant because your Bible tells you that, Gideon. And I want to be at the table too.
Wait. Let me object. Wait, hold on. Let me address that. Come see, you raising up the Christians now. No, you're actually correct. But in reality, with you being correct, me as a humble servant, the philosophy of the biblical Hebrew Israelites is that we gonna run this thing.
Gideon, I'm an atheist, and I'm saying you're not going to run it. Look at Kenneth Bay in North Korea. What happened to Kenneth Bay in North Korea?
That's true.
15 years hard labor. You know why? Because people like you are unaware of the power of the atheists. So no, you're not going to run it.
He's jumping at the bit.
All
Let
right,
me go
go
ahead
ahead.
and get it.
All right.
I want the numbers though. How many of us in there?
First of all, he's asked a very important question.
That's all right.
How's that? I'm on your side.
Momentarily, of course.
No, because if you're talking about a socialist organization,
Right.
how does it relate to the African American community?
Okay.
And if you can't have an organization that reaches out and includes that, then what do you have? And that's the question you're asking, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I would say this, we have too few in our organization.
Okay.
We can have somebody like Cornel West,
Right.
who's a
Token. I'm sorry.
No, he's down with Mamiya. He's down with
wait,
hey,
hold on,
Come on.
Cornel West is down with Mamiya. So
See,
I'm
we
down.
got nigga. I
He's
invited
down.
him. He comes to eat at my house and everything.
down for me.
Play with my children, my dog,
me.
all that.
Let brother.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
I only brought that up because he is a very important thinker at this point. No matter how
He
you,
is.
well, however you want to characterize
He
it,
is.
he has an analysis and he knows how to reach people. He knows how to talk to people
He does.
on a number of levels. Okay.
Absolutely.
So the answer to your question is yes, we don't have enough. And I would say among left organizations, that's a weakness all throughout the left
1%?
organization.
0.5%?
Maybe a couple of percent. All right, so I'm agreeing with you. That is, I'm saying that is a problem.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what is not a problem is that the history of African American leaders, they understand democratic socialism.
Absolutely.
I want to give you some examples.
Absolutely.
We've talked about the 1960s, the civil rights movement, the 50th year. You want to go down some of the pioneers of the civil rights revolution or the movement during that period of
It was
time?
not a
A. Philip
revolution.
Randolph.
Okay.
He was a member of the Socialist Party. He ran as a socialist. He understood what democratic socialism was about. Here's one that people don't know about.
But I can make Tracy's
Martin
argument.
Luther King,
No.
MLK.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He didn't talk about this.
They said he was a commie.
Yeah.
He didn't talk about it publicly, but when he had a small group with him, he said, maybe it's time to move toward democratic socialism. Okay? You go through any of the great, Bayard Rustin. You all know about Bayard Rustin?
I know about Bay Rustin, yeah.
He's one of those.
What he had, yeah. Well,
You know,
hold
Milton,
it.
all due respect. For
I'm
every-
saying,
Okay.
all I'm pointing out to is that while left groups haven't made headways in that area, and that's a weakness on our part, there is an impulse in the African American community toward democratic socialism. It's part of their
Certainly.
history. And so the question is how do you build bridges? Because the school to prison pipeline
Right.
that you ran down, Tracy, that's just the new Jim Crow.
Exactly.
I mean, that's such a
Tip of the
powerful
iceberg.
invocation
Absolutely.
of what that's about, and we
Don't forget your mic.
surely need to understand that. And so I think there's ways that we can come together. We got to just learn how to build bridges and be able to talk to each other.
I think
See, this is the deal. One thing is that you're talking about actually like putting people in office into the system that is the problem of this of what
The mafia. Join the mafia
No, yeah,
and you
join.
change
Yeah,
it.
no, yeah, yeah, exactly. Join the mafia and you can change it. You know what? The mafia and this capitalist imperialist system has its rules and its laws, and it's based on oppression and it's based on exploitation.
Exactly.
And I don't care. You're not going to put anyone in there that's actually going to do anything because if they don't actually conform to it, they're out. And you've
Exactly.
seen over and over again those those that they do not want and do not represent certain even sections of the capitalists who rule this thing, they get kicked out. So the other thing, but let me just say this, hold on, no, let me finish. The other thing is that you have a whole constitution that needs to be ripped up.
Yes.
The United States Constitution needs to be ripped up. It was based on private appropriation and private commodity accumulation and private capital, which included, by the way, people. Yes. This whole system started on slavery. It does,
Let me ask
and
this
it still
question.
does. But let me just finish one more second. The point is that how your question, I think, is a good one. How do you actually, quote unquote, guarantee in the revolution that black people and people of color are going to actually have a significant role in that revolution and in building that society? I think that actually when you look at the Constitution, I think this is a worthwhile thing, the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America, that actually is built into it. The oppression of black people is actually a part of what that society is going to do. The uprooting the oppression of women, that is a part of what is the foundational part of this Constitution of the new Socialist Republic. It is not the you keep saying what do you say, a democratic socialism after the revolution. It is not a democratic socialism like what Milt represents. That is not it. It is actually a revolutionary communist transition to communism. That's very different. That is not based in any principles of capitalism at all, that you are going to be exploiting or oppressing people here and around the world to accumulate capital for a small amount of people who actually accumulate capital off of the backs of the people and the environment.
I know I want to jump in here. There's a couple of things I want to say. First, I always disagree. Brother Gideon and I will always disagree with this because I am not a reformist, by no means a fascist, but I think that far too long the African people here in America have been non-participants in the policies and the procedures that govern their life. If we sit here and say that didn't, are we sitting here denying that the civil rights movement wasn't effective?
It has not been.
It has been effective. There was. Let me explain to you. Let me explain to you. It was effective because you're sitting here on television, brother. Just the fact in itself. I mean, come on, man. Let's not.
There's a black president.
Exactly.
So
certain participation has been effective. We're not saying that I think the failure, our failure as an African people, we're saying that we have made it. That we have to have that component with the revolutionary element. Secondly, about the democracy.
Let's get to it.
We say no democracy, but I'm reading here when it comes to minorities that we would have to vote whether we wanted to separate. So how is it that you guys don't have to vote, but when it comes to the Africans here in America, according to the Constitution, the Chairman of Bacon, we would have to vote, and if we lose the vote, then we would be a part of the Revolutionary Communist Party, regardless of what, because we were outvoted. So why do we have to take a vote?
It isn't actually that you are outvoted. There's actually there's a plan for if people want to secede.
Yeah, but they have to vote.
There is. You do the people themselves.
He actually read the book, by the way.
No, that's good.
Said we don't read.
No, I'm good. I'm glad. No, I'm good. But actually, it doesn't say. It says that actually the people who that want to secede are the ones who actually vote.
Okay,
that's what it says.
That's what I mean. And if we don't get the vote, then we don't succeed.
Well, however, but you can also have there's also opportunity for autonomous regions.
That's what I mean.
But I see a setup for another war because what if Yang and I said, you know what, we want to be capitalists again. Now we have an issue. What if we all vote on capitalism again?
Well, that's why democratic socialism doesn't work because that is not up for a vote. No, capitalism is, look, you're not going to go through all the sacrifice and everything that you look at. No. You're like, for instance, you look at like the Civil War, you know, you're going to go through and you're going to overturn slavery and then it's up for a vote whether we go back to slavery. I don't think so.
No, they did. That's exactly what they did. They just took the chains off their feet and put them on their head. Let me just say this, though. Let me just say this briefly, because what you're talking about going back to slavery, that's exactly what the slaves did, because they had no resources, they had no land, they had been taken away from their motherland. So if you have no money, no food, and don't know which way they go, what you gonna do? Go right back to your mouth.
Can I just read something real quick? I just wanted to read something real quick.
Go.
This is what I quite understand what we're saying here. it was saying that it's talking about the right to succeed. If called for by a vote of at least 2/3 of the members of the legislature of the African American Autonomous Region, this right to succeed and form a separate country will be put to a vote and decided by such a vote in which African Americans who reside in the overall territory of the new Socialist Republic in North America and who are eligible to vote in elections in this republic shall be the only people eligible to vote. Basically, we're not voting. You got in the revolution, we're talking no democracy, no democratic socialism. So there's no voting going on until we want our own stuff.
Well, no, there is a lot of voting going on in the whole in the entire.
Okay, because I'm just making sure we ain't the only one voting. I don't, you know.
Okay, well then you didn't read. Actually, then you didn't read the
No,
whole
I
thing.
read all the minorities have to vote.
No. But if you read the whole thing, it actually has a whole thing where it actually divides out.
Where for Chairman of Aiken?
Excuse me?
Where are we voting for? Like I'm saying, when we talk about running our government, when we're talking about running the government, is that up for vote? What I'm saying is if
because in revolutions, generals are born.
Exactly.
And they may not be agreeing with Mr. Bacon at the end of the day.
I.e. Egypt?
Right, Egypt is a good example.
Egypt, how is Egypt a good
The
example?
revolution,
I would,
and the generals took over from.
But that wasn't a revolution. Again,
Coup d'etat.
that's very different.
Coup d'etat versus
Capitalism is well and alive in Egypt today. They never got rid of imperialism. That was not a revolution. That was not a revolution, and that's an unfortunate thing because there was potential for a revolution, but they didn't have the leadership to actually be able to do that. So I agree with you.
That's the problem that we see it. With what I hear, there's basically a cult of personality. What gets run down here is his view. I think Avakian is where? Where is he living right now?
New York.
Well, I'm not really.
Okay, well, anyway.
All right.
Yeah, that isn't necessary. That isn't necessary to know.
The only reason I'm saying this is you need to have people who are here and are engaged in struggle who can talk about that. And from our point of view in DSA, we think we learn from each other. There's no platform or a model of what it's going to look like. You know how you're going to find out about it? Is by engaging in struggle and doing it. And then, guess what? Your ideas about what it might look like could be turned totally around. And so that's okay, because we're not afraid for letting that process unfold. And the other thing is, on the issue of electoral politics, a lot of what we're talking about is class struggle. Wouldn't you agree?
Sir,
we all agree?
Absolutely.
Well, you know where class struggle occurs too? Is in the electoral arena. Now, we don't like to think of it that way because it's a done deal, but that's where a class struggle does take place. And if you walk away from it and you don't get engaged in it at all, and you say, hey, this is a waste of time, then guess what you've done? You've given the power to those people on top, the 1%. So when you had that socialist, we had this discussion right before the program started, right?
Exactly.
We're saying, so we have a Democratic Socialist candidate who wins in Seattle.
That's right.
Does that mean something? Well, I'll tell you, a lot of the left people I've talked to, they're very excited about it.
Yes, I'm excited about that.
Tracy, you may not be excited about it. I don't know how the RCP looks at it, but I know a lot of left people are saying, look, we can talk about being socialist because right now, there's still a lot of demonizing. As soon as you say communism and socialism. So when you have somebody who can run for office and say, guess what? I am a democratic socialist. And she wins. And people aren't scared about hearing that. We've still got the legacy of the 50s, the McCarthy period. So we got to recognize how important that is. And when she could say, I'm standing up for a $15 minimum wage, I'm going to be dealing with some issues, and they asked her this question, are you afraid that you might have to compromise, that you might have to be co-opted? What did she wind up saying? She intends to stand for what she does, but she's in the position that is.
Yeah, but that's
what they all say.
That's a patent answer there.
Okay, go ahead.
You can't dismiss what she's done. You cannot.
You can, but the people are going to, you're right. I mean, now in this day and time, the people are going to try, so they're so sick of the current system that, yeah, they try socialism. Hell, we got a black president. Hello. We try anything. Anytime they've tried anything.
Yeah, and then you get disappointed.
Right. I think that the thing is, yes, it is a class issue. But us as African people here in America, we can't get caught up in the fact that it is just a class issue. It is a race issue.
Yes.
Capitalism was built on the backs of slavery and founded on racism.
Absolutely.
That's right.
If we erase that totally, then we get co-opted into the movement thinking that we have achieved some level of some level
Equality.
Right, some level that we haven't got to.
Exactly.
Right now, before we become ultra multiculturalists, before we become ultra humanitarian, to be a revolutionary, you have to be humanitarian.
Absolutely.
I am a humanitarian, but primary, my first concern is and will always be to the group of people to whom I belong.
Exactly.
Okay,
And
well, Yango, let's just deal with the internal conflict. Let's deal with the theocratic
BS that we go through in national, especially us in the Panther Party,
Right.
that we've been going through in the Panther Party. I mean, it's ridiculous. This is
Well,
what we see: lack of political
well,
education.
Well, that's the dictatorship.
and
I'm
that's
talking
a whole
about the
nother show,
theocrats.
you know, that's a
I'm
whole
talking
nother
about the theocrats. You know, I don't want to forget. But what I'm saying is we have internal conflicts with ideologies that you know. And when I say, let me just say for the record, when I say black nationalists, meaning J. Edgar Hoover deemed black nationals as a threat because the form, meaning it was a council of people.
Exactly.
That is an African concept. We can call it
From the beginning.
From the
Well, I mean,
beginning.
when you look
And
at our-
he made a good point about a cult personality. We as black people are not going to follow behind one name. Now, if you have a council to balance that, Tracy. Now, we can have Bobby
It is.
Vick, and I would love to have him on the show, you on the show, and we can talk as a council. And that's what I'm saying, not only to Tracy and the Revolutionary Party, I'm talking about the Black Panther Party also. You know what I'm saying? And Yang can come out for that. So I'm saying it's not only a Gideon and Yang will make a good point about race, but I'm talking about even within our race, we have issues about political education.
So
Yeah, but
that's
I
what I'm saying.
want
So we have to be careful about what we sign on to. Like we have some
'Cause really-
some of the things that happen is by a lack of identity and a lack of political education. When you're coming with, there's no denying that Engels and Marx were brilliant people. There's no denying that. So due to lack of political education in our community, our people are co-opted. Some of the most brilliant and brightest people in our community are co-opted, and they go wholeheartedly over to these other parties without addressing the specific issues that affect us as a people.
Can I mention
Yeah,
some
but-
names? Barack Obama, Clarence Thomas.
Yeah, well, actually, I
My
want
favorite
to.
color, Cornel West.
Well, I wanna-
Cornel West.
Yeah, but I
You know what I'm
want
saying? It's
to.
brilliant.
This is what I want to say. First of all, you know, the party, Revolutionary Communist Party. Bob Avakian leads a party. There is a council. There is a whole party that actually contributes to to the whole like I mean, Bob Avakian did actually develop the new synthesis of communism, but it was not without large and life experience, other people contributing to this, whatever. It is far from a cult. I mean, you call this a cult, you would call the Black Panther Party, the original Black Panther Party in the 60s a cult. It was not a cult. It is actually based in read the material. Do you agree with it or don't you agree with it? That's what it is. It's not like there's one person, he's just, unthinking, non-questioning. This is a party that actually has a lot of ferment, a lot of, your criticism, all kinds of stuff that goes on. But the point is that, when you're actually going for putting the people into an understanding of what the problem is, that it is based in capitalism itself, and that without getting rid of that system itself that is based in oppression, you can vote all the people you want into it, try to change it up or whatever, try to get like certain words out there. And I agree with you completely, Milt. The word socialism, the word communism has been dumped on for the last 40 years, and we have to get stigmatized, and it's actually been lied about, and we have to actually turn that around and educate people to really understand that that is the kind of world that we want to get to. As far as whether people are going to follow like a particular person or not, yes, they do. Look at how many people got behind Barack Obama. What are you talking about? Of course they do.
Tracy,
Of course they do. And you have
Tracy.
so many examples of people. Look at people got behind Clinton. People are going to do it again in 3 years. This is not something that people don't get behind a person.
But Tracy, you never did answer the question Milt
ahead.
did. He was transparent. He said there are few woolly-haired melanated people.
Uh-oh.
I wanted to ask you again, how many people look like me are in, with your knowledge, percentage-wise, in the communist community?
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I can verify that. I know in Los Angeles, they have a large percent of black people. I know, what's his name?
Carl Dix.
Carl Dix.
Give me a percentage.
Yeah.
Give me a percentage.
Well, I cannot give you a percentage. I don't. When you're actually talking about a revolutionary party, a real you understand that there is a lot of antagonism when you're talking about wanting to overturn the present system and actually going for something else. you have to actually have a lot of, there's not.
Non-disclosure.
Well, no, there's a need to know. I mean, when you're very serious about that, why would you want to put everything out front? Look, you know what the NSA and everything that Snowden just released.
That's right.
What are you going to have? Everything out in the open just so that you can they can crush you before you even have a chance to go in.
The numbers that of
but
our
it is
people.
a multinational organization or a party that actually is building a movement for revolution.
And is it just black? Is it just a concern? Because it's not just black skin. It's okay.
Wrapping up.
Okay, we got to wrap it up. Can I get a commitment? We got to do a part 2. We got to do a part 2, man.
Yes.
We just scratched the surface.
Yes.
Milton, I want you to come back. Tracy, Yanga, Gideon.
Yeah.
Oh, we got.
I'm producer. So let me say this. Man, I don't think it's so much. I think we have to get out. Like you said, black nationalism is an ideology. It's not a skin-based thing. So it's not just because we look at President Obama. You know what I'm saying? Clearly, he's not a black nationalist. So it's not just a matter of how many black people are in these so-called organizations, but how many conscious black people, how many black people or African people that actually know that they're African, what are their concerns. When we talk to the Carl Dixes, and if I'd had the opportunity to talk to them, and even our Cornel Wests, what is their ideological and philosophical views on being African here in America? Are they just socialists and communists? Exactly. Which Africans have a tendency to do that. When we get in some, we become just Muslim, just Christians, we're not African Muslims because we don't know our identity. So my whole thing is not to, but one of the studies I do is the scientific socialism and crewmism is what they call it. But so there is I don't have a problem with communism, socialism. I don't have a problem with studying these very things. But one of the things, and I'll be brief, that I'll say this, is that it has to change to affect us. This is why you had Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels come up with it. But in China, they have Maoism.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Not today, they don't.
Well, they don't. Right. They may
capitalism.
not. But it's capitalism today. But what I'm saying is basically these are people that didn't have the question of nationality, so they changed the communism and socialism to reflect and fit their particular and specific needs.
Milton, close us out.
Well, listen, if you want to reach people, you got to have an organization that's transparent. I mean, if you want to educate folks about even if talking about revolution, you got to let people know that you're available, you're accessible, you can reach out to.
Well,
so that's what we do. That's what we do. We're an open organization. And so, sure, we can have some differences of opinion, but they get worked out and nobody has to split and say, I'm not satisfied with that. I would just end up on something that we can all agree on. Maybe we should talk about it next time.
Let's do it.
Worker co-ops, consumer co-ops.
Let's do it.
Because
co-ops,
do
definitely.
African American community can have governance around that, economic issues. Let's spend some time talking about that issue at the next.
I would like that.
As a matter of fact, when we talk about the co-ops, we also have to look at the issue of the black farmers. And I'll just use the term black farmers because we have always worked cooperatively, but because of the regulations of an unjust system, which I cannot politically find the desire to even support, then I know that they will kill any type of cooperative methods that we've tried to use and have used in the past.
I don't want no Bible. I want clean water and non-genetically modified food. I don't want your God.
I'm with you.
The other thing I think we need to talk about in the next session, though, is how this country itself sits on top of the rest of the world and is parasitic and just it just creates the whole misery rather than everything like in this country. Why don't we look at the whole world?
All right, we out. Peace.
That's right.